Greetings, members, one and all of the Salivation Nation. If you are a nation, gold holds the future for you. And if you are a bank, gold holds the future for you. And if you are an individual, perhaps gold will hold the future for you as well. Let's explore. Yes, this is another look. We're going to take a look at some data here with regards to central banks' holding of gold in their reserves. We're going to take a look at that in perspective of you, the viewer, and how you have evolved over the years and have changed your strategy in terms of precious metals. And yes, this is going to be a case for gold. But I think it's something that will be palpable for many of you out there who maybe have not dabbled in this area or maybe just barely have. Because I do believe that as time goes on, some of the stuff we're going to discuss in this video will give an indication as to kind of where we may be going, even if it's a slow crawl. That could take quite some time. I believe that what these nations and banks and individuals are doing is a prime example of kind of where we're heading because of the faith that they have in the current system. So this particular article here shows a graph, and this is this top paragraph here kind of really says it all. After the financial crisis and housing crisis of 2007-2008, which really, in a sense, rocked the world. They called it the Great Recession. And many of the same patterns and same things that we have done that got us in the mess in the first place, well, we are still doing. I think in some way we are living off the high of injected money into the system. And nations are feeling the heat on that, with the dollar being the top reserve currency, according to the IMF, and other currencies in that breadbasket of reserve currencies follow the same pathway. In other words, they are just designated as fiat by government decree, and other nations of the world are printing money, devaluing their currencies in a currency war in some cases with the United States and others. Central banks have stopped selling gold in about 2010, and then they started accumulating it. As gold provides that hedge against economic instability and currency manipulation, the action of these central banks gives us insight as to which countries are most capable of handling an economic storm. And this map, though I don't really feel like this is the best representation of what could be, because it just kind of looks like a bunch of blobs on the screen here, but it is a dot matrix map with one dot equaling $40 million worth of gold reserves. And we don't think of them in terms of dollars, but I don't know how the basis of this was per ounce. There's some small print here. This was retrieved, the gold price was retrieved on May of 2019. And so we can look back and see what that could have been. But let's say it's somewhere around, $1,400 or what have you. Really, the price is, though, somewhat important and gives us perspective in terms of a dollar cost price, just the sheer size and weight of the amount of gold holding in dollars for these nations should give us a better idea or example of who's the most prepared in case of an economic storm. And what stands out to me is the boot of Italy. That's right. Italy, which, by the way, this also includes Sicily here, interesting, but Italy is the most prepared in the Mediterranean region, obviously, and a big holder in Europe. In fact, they're larger than France, and they're not too far behind Germany, who is the largest in the European Union. Italy has had some trouble economically, but they've not sold off their gold. So they've got this gold, and if the dollar were to fail, or if the European Union were to break up, well, they would be in a good position, I think, with their gold reserves there. Very interesting indeed. Obviously, Germany is a rich nation and is the richest in the European Union, and they're the largest. And France is not too far behind Italy and Germany there. Per capita, the largest is Switzerland. Per capita, with the holdings there, they're doing very well there. What's surprising with these European nations is what's happening here with China and Russia. They've been accumulating a lot of gold in the last years, well, especially since 2010. And so they're trying to catch up, and they're not far behind some of these stronger European nations there. And China is a producer of gold. You saw me, I did a video not too long ago about China's dominance in the Southeast Pacific, trying to accumulate more gold from these island nation mines, the Solomon mines and Vaudeville, and they are on their path. They want to be the top dog there. Gold is where it's at. That's what's happening there. So if we take a look at that, and we look at it in terms of where we're at now, this is the most recent data that we can find here with the gold reserves of the largest gold holding countries worldwide as of October 2019. Actually, the data were compiled at the very end of September 2019. We can see here, obviously, the United States is still number one there, but Germany is in a distant second place, and then it goes down. Italy is third, France fourth, Russia, China not too far behind. Look at that. They are vying. They want to get up. They want to move up to these tiers, and they're not so far behind at the rate they're accumulating. They very well could surpass France and Italy very soon. These other nations here are accumulating, and some of them might surprise you. Saudi Arabia is fairly down on the list here. Belgium, Turkey has been accumulating as well too, at a great rate. Netherlands, but in the news recently, we've been hearing about other nations that are way down on the list and how much they're accumulating. Here's another looking at the statistics. This is quite telling. This tells us how much since the first quarter of 2000 up to the second quarter here of 2019. These data are also current, and we're seeing between these nations, China, India, Mexico, Russian Federation, and Turkey, we can see that Mexico has been relatively flat here, but Turkey has been kind of increasing some here, especially as of late, especially if you look here towards the end of the third quarter of 2017. Great pickups here. Russian Federation has been very steady and increasing to the population, or the amount of reserves of gold they're holding. Let's take a look at the United States of America in comparison with these holders of gold. And look at there. No movement at all. Continual amount of gold. 8,133 metric tons of gold. Constant for their central bank. They're not adding any. And if they keep this up and not continue to add any gold to their reserves, it makes you wonder how long it will take for other nations to catch up to us or get not far behind. Apparently, we're not worried here in the United States as being the largest holder of gold. Now, obviously, some people dispute that, but nonetheless, there is that. Let's remove the United States out of that equation and kind of take a look at some of these other nations here. And in fact, let's take out the Russian Federation. We know they're accumulating a lot. And let's take out Mexico, because we know they're not accumulating terribly a whole lot there. Turkey. Wait a minute. Actually, I may have read the wrong graph, but let's take China's movement in gold is probably some of the most sporadic and increased as of lately. So we're going to take a look back here. Actually, let's pull Mexico back in here. Yes, I did read that correctly. They're not doing very much there. Let's take a look at Poland. We recently did a video about Poland, and Serbia is not on here. Serbia is on here. Let's take a look at Serbia. And let's do it from the... Let's go from 2nd quarter 2016 and see exactly what's going on here with some of these nations recently here. China's increased marginal from 2016 for the whole grand scheme of things with the whole graph here. We look at India. Serbia's at the bottom there. This must not have counted. They added 9 tons, though, as of recently, which is a big deal because they've been flat for so long. So apparently these data don't account for the only a slight addition here from 20 to 21, but just recently they added 9 more tons. Poland has added 100 tons that they already owned, but they've already owned it, but it was patriated in the Bank of England. And here you can see that even as such, they're increasing 128 the first quarter of 2019, all the way up to this 228, 128. So that does account for that 100 tons apparently. So I guess it's what they hold in their nation. So very interesting and fascinating for sure to see these nations and even some of these smaller nations accumulating gold. And I think it just goes to show you that these nations they're moving forward. They're moving forward. They see something on the horizon of some sort in relation to an economic, with regards to economic stability. They want economic stability for their nations, and what better way, on a financial sense, than to protect yourself with gold. Gold has always been money. It's always been a store of value, and we can see here from these data, which is also current, the amount of tonnage, how much has been held and increased over the past periods of time here. In the previous here, the United States added 0.46, really negligible, not much there to speak of there. Germany has actually lost a little bit here from the previous. Italy has lost slightly here in the previous. So the top nations really haven't been adding much from the previous times here. You look at the range here, 33.67 to 34.69 in the tonnage here. And but if you go down here, China has been increasing, 1936, 1948. Switzerland has been flat. Japan has been relatively flat here. So you can see that there's a lot of activity with some of these smaller nations. Turkey, look at that, from 321 to 385. Portugal has lost a little bit. Kazakhstan has been, I've heard they've been increasing, but it looks here from the previous, they've actually lost some gold here, or sold it, or what have you. United Kingdom has been flat. Spain, and these other nations here. So it's very interesting and fascinating here to see how these nations are moving forward and accumulating as such as they can. I think the more of these nations that we find that are accumulating gold, I think that sends a message. It sends a message they're doing it for some reason. Why would they do that? Here's Serbia. Again, this does not reflect the 9 tons that they just added. When you see movement with these smaller nations, such as Poland and Serbia, that should tell you something. These smaller economies, they take the time to add more gold. Well, they're going to do that, and they're going to they're doing it for a reason, because it's not as easy for some of these smaller nations to accumulate even 1 or 2 tons in some cases. So 9 tons for Serbia is a big deal. 100 tons for Poland is a big deal. And this list goes down. So you see there's a lot of different nations here. And this tells you, look at Malta. Malta has increased pretty substantially here from 0.19 to 0.25. I think that is even newsworthy. For sure. All right, very good. Cameroon has no gold. They didn't have gold before. Well, at least not a measurable amount of gold. Who knows? Kenya is at the very last of the list, 0.02 tons. They still have more than I do. So Kenya is a richer nation than most of us here, probably, in terms of gold holdings. Now, what does this message send to us? I think this sends to us the message that even the central banks, we'll go back to this graphic and see here, the IMF has $129.2 billion worth of gold. And even the European Central Bank has 23.2 billion. And the Central Bank of Central Banks, the Bank of International Settlements, has $4.7 billion worth of gold. They are the institution through Basel III agreement that is noted gold as a tier 1 asset, from a 50% valuation to 100% safe valuation. And I think that designator that happened earlier this year is a driver as to why we're going to see this happen more and more. The addition of more gold reserves to preserve the wealth of these nations, because they are losing faith. When you see these banks adding gold, they are essentially sending a message that they're losing faith in the currencies, their currencies, and the U.S. dollar, the top world reserve currency. That's right, gold. It is a protector. It is a preserver of wealth. It is a safe haven in times of economic instability, and nations know this. All these nations, even the ones that hold less than a ton, they know it. They're holding it for a reason. And they're all sending us a message as not only big banks, their central banks, and even these entities that we mentioned, the IMF, the European Central Bank, the Bank of International Settlements, that gold is indeed the ultimate safe haven and money. So with that message ringing out, though not discussed in the news as such, because the media and even they themselves, the banks, the nations themselves, will not talk about this. And I think there's a part of a reason of that, because they want to accumulate the gold for themselves while the prices are as such. Because if the population were to accumulate this gold, that would drive the price up even more. And they want to empower themselves. Well, I would say that we should be our own central bank, and we should accumulate, knowing what is there in plain sight. We just have to pull back the veil of other information that may cloud it, and that's kind of what this video is for. Look at these shelves and shelves of gold. You deserve some of that gold. Not to say that you should walk in that central bank and take one of these bars, but you can buy your own. And it's not as easy as obviously gold is expensive. If you're a silver stacker or used to buying a silver bullion coin for $20 and under per ounce, and you're accumulating a lot of that, it's a tough move psychologically to think about buying a tenth of an ounce for $150 or what have you for a very, very little tiny coin. However, I will tell you this, that I do believe it is wise to diversify into some gold. Gold is that ultimate hedge against economic instability. People store it, people reserve it, they treasure it. Why? Because it is treasure, and it is a valuable treasure. Even much more, I think, than silver. And make no mistake, I love silver. I have a lot more of it than I do gold. But I believe it is a way to diversify within the precious metals community, to hold gold as an ultimate hedge. And think about it, here we are in the age of the internet, where information and competition is as such that you are able to find more deals now than ever before for gold. In fact, member of this community made us aware of a tenth of an ounce of gold at spot. Yes, and that's just it. Finding it in small fractional weights at spot is becoming, in a sense, more commonplace. However, it's still relatively rare. You can find even other fractional deals at spot or close to it, quarter ounce deals. and quarter ounce is probably the sweet spot to find to be able to buy gold. But if you think about it, when you hold that quarter ounce of gold, you're holding a lot of value in a small space. And if you can save up and afford an ounce of gold, and I think that most silver stackers really can do that if they think about it. I have tried to discipline myself to make that move towards gold outside of silver, and I'm still buying silver, but I think it is something that where you can hold a lot more value in a smaller package. Plus, it does teach you discipline on a grander scale to be able to save up your money and to be cautious and patient through these price fluctuations of even gold, but especially silver. So that's why we do it, folks. We do it to be disciplined and to also empower ourselves. And that's the power of gold, is that very thing. Banks know it. Central banks know it. Nations know it. So we hold it. And we hold these precious metals to be self-evident, because that's what they are, folks. They sell themselves. And so I would encourage you to consider it if you're a silver stacker and you've not really dabbled into gold, or maybe have gotten a piece here and there, to help broaden and diversify your holdings. Because I think there's going to come a time, I believe, sometime, I don't know when exactly it'll happen. I don't want to predict that. I'm not a doom and gloom type of person. I don't necessarily think the economy is going to collapse or what have you. But we're obviously overdue for another recession at the very least. And I believe that if we have another recession, that brings us even closer to a weakened dollar system where people will have even less faith in it, which means that it will have to be reset in some form or another. Whether that form will take place, I believe they're even working on it even now. I think that when they meet in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, the Federal Reserve, they are trying to discuss and find a way to reset the dollar and present it to a world in a way that they can still have control, where they won't be bound by as little rules as possible with it, like now. I think they're trying their best. They're using this time now, in a time of easing and using the tools that they have, such as lower interest rates and the like, even to the point of having negative interest rates. I think that'll happen before you see a dollar reset. If there is a dollar reset, if they have to be bound by any rules, it'll be rules that they can convince you will be put into place to prop up the hegemony of the dollar. Eventually, it's going to come down to the ultimate rule, and that is to be based off of real money, and that is gold. And even to some extent, silver. I believe silver is money too. So there it is, folks. This is how you empower yourself, I believe. Not that you can't with silver, but I believe the diversification in gold is a step also to further protect yourself against economic instability. I hope you enjoyed this video. Post your thoughts below. Would like to extend a multitude of gratitude to y'all for watching, and encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.